they usually wake up almost exactly 5 hours after their last drink. Your body can be exhausted and crying out for sleep, but you can't physically sleep because you've got all those stimulants kicking around in your system.
The other myth that I would love to talk to you about, because I know you feel really strongly about this, is sleep.
Yes.
Because a lot of people say it helps them to sleep. So what would you say about that?
So there's two sort of strands to this. I've already touched on how when you take alcohol, you sedate your brain, but then it goes into an oversensitive phase. So you've got that sort of balance going on, almost like a swinging one way and then swinging back the other way. Then to apply it to sleep, I think very quickly it's useful just to understand a bit about sleep. A lot of people just vaguely think that sleep is, you fall into bed, you go unconscious for a few hours, and you wake up and you're good to go. It's not as simple as that. When you sleep naturally, you go through very specific sleep cycles. So very, very briefly, there's deep sleep, which, as you can imagine, you're very deeply unconscious. But there's another sleep cycle called REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement, because when you're asleep, your eyes flicker even though your eyes are closed. It's a very interesting sleep part of the sleep cycle, because when they monitor people in REM sleep, their brain lights up almost as if they're fully awake. It's when you dream. So the dreams come in REM sleep. Whereas with deep sleep, your body is physically regenerating and recuperating. REM sleep is when you're mentally processing things and your brain and mental health is actually recuperating. Okay, so it's a hugely important part of sleep. They've done tests on rats where they've starved them of REM sleep and they've been dead within a few weeks. They've done volunteer studies with humans where it sounds horrible. You go up to this sleep clinic and you sleep there and they attach sensors to you. And when you go into REM sleep, they wake you up. So they don't stop you sleeping. They just stop you getting REM sleep. And within a day or two, people become very depressed, very disorientated. So it has a massive effect on your mental health. Now, when you drink alcohol, for the first part of the evening, or the first part of your sleep, the first 4 or 5 hours, you're too heavily sedated to go into REM sleep. So there was a statistic I heard the other day where I think the average amount of REM sleep is 2.5 hours. Naturally, that's what you should be getting each night. If you have 1 or 2 alcoholic drinks, so not a massive amount, 1 or 2 will halve it. And then I think a couple more than that drags it down to like half an hour. So you're onto like a fifth of what you should be getting. And more than 5 or 6, you get almost none at all. So you're having this massive impact on your REM sleep. Now, alcohol has a half-life of 5 hours. What half-life means is how long it takes for the amount of drug in your system to drop by half. So if you have 10 units, within 5 hours, it's dropped to 5. Okay, so what we normally find is when you hit that 5 hour mark, because the sedatives have dropped and the stimulant side starting to kick in, you wake up. It's almost like drinking. This is what I often say to people. Say you sleep from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. That's 8 hours. Okay, that's you at your best. Drinking alcohol is like setting an alarm for 3 or 4 in the morning and getting up and drinking 7 or 8 mugs of strong black coffee to lie there twitching and your mind. That's what happens. It's the equivalent, because that's when the alcohol drops and the stimulants kick in. And that's why people find they usually wake up almost exactly 5 hours after their last drink to be unable to get back to sleep. Your body can be exhausted and crying out for sleep, but you can't physically sleep because you've got all those stimulants kicking around in your system.
And is that what people call anxiety?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same side of it. It's almost like drinking, when you drink too much caffeine and you feel very on edge and nervous and you can't sleep, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So the point there is alcohol has a massive impact on your REM sleep. And, again, just to give a sort of a brief snippet of the summary, there's a whole world of difference between alcohol-induced unconsciousness and sleep. So get that into your mind. Alcohol-induced unconsciousness is not sleep. The biggest reported symptom of a hangover is tiredness. And even 1 or 2 drinks will interrupt your natural sleeping cycle. So it doesn't matter whether you're drinking a dozen drinks every night or just 1 every couple of days. It has a huge impact on your sleeping cycle. So it ruins your sleep and makes you feel tired, is the
Yeah.
short answer. But the other branch to this that I mentioned at the beginning, so slightly separate this. So you and I don't drink, okay? So when we get towards bedtime, our brain naturally starts releasing more sedatives to calm things down. It starts closing everything down, and we drift into a natural and restorative sleep. And that's why we've talked so much about good sleep hygiene, get away from the white lights, have a bedroom only for sleeping, a hot bath or relax or dim the lights or whatever. And all that really is sending the message to your brain to say, right, it's bedtime, start closing everything down so we can go into, as I say, natural sleep. When you drink alcohol regularly, your brain doesn't go through that process because it just relies on the sedating effects of the alcohol. So your brain's doing it, you start drinking each evening, and your brain doesn't go through that close down process. Why would it need to? Because it knows that every night it's got this sedative coming into its system that closes things down for it. The brain's a great adapter. It adapts when we drink and it adapts when we stop drinking. So what people find is if you're drinking regularly and you have a night off, you'll find it incredibly hard to get to sleep because your brain's not used to going through this closing down process. And actually, you have to wait 3 to 5 days. It doesn't take long, but it is a few nights when your sleep's impacted before your brain realizes, oh, this sedative's no longer here. I need to start picking up the slack and doing it myself. But the problem is that's people's experience. So if you're drinking every day or most days and you have a day off, you find it incredibly hard to fall to sleep. And then the next day you have a drink and you can go to sleep easily, or sleep in inverted commas. It's actually, as I say, alcohol-induced unconsciousness, which isn't sleep anyway. But that's what happens. So people end up with these very deeply held beliefs that alcohol helps you sleep because their personal experiences, I can fall asleep when I'm drinking, but when I'm not, I simply cannot sleep at all. Yeah. So it creates that horrible nightmarish situation where they're getting increasingly tired because they're drinking and they're not going through the right sleep cycles. Sleep becomes increasingly precious, but when they try and stop, they can't sleep. So they're almost clinging on even harder to alcohol because it's the only way they can get to sleep. And as I say, they're becoming increasingly tired, not realizing that actually you need to jettison it completely, have a few nights of bad sleep before you get back to normal, then catch up on sleep. And that's when the tiredness finally leaves you for good.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, we're all running around thinking it helps me relax, it relieves my stress, it relieves my anxiety, it helps me sleep. But the reality is that it actually causes those problems. And therefore, we're trying to relieve those problems with the thing that caused them. I think that's...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think this kind of stuff was the information I did have when I quit drinking. And I think that's what gave me the key to stopping, is that I knew after a few days, my brain chemistry would get back to normal. I'd feel much better. I'd start sleeping better. I knew that in a week or two, I'd start to feel much, much better. And that was what gave me the key to quitting. And it was then over time that I found like social occasions, vacations, holidays, Christmas, all that were not only enjoyable, but actually more enjoyable without alcohol. I think that's how it all sort of pieced together for me.